Hey guys, welcome back to another of our awesome Summer Coach Collab series chats. Today, I'm here with Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us again. And if you guys are new here, I'm just going to give you a quick, what's going on, okay? Sarah is a certified health and life coach. We're just going to be on here sharing our hearts about different topics throughout the summer. And you guys are kind of in the middle of this series. If you haven't caught the other three yet on my channel, go ahead and check those out. I'll put a link in the description below. And then today, we're going to be talking about a really important topic, coping mechanisms. We have talked so far about things like binge, restrict cycle, and yo-yo dieting. We've talked about things like emotional eating, and it's just so intense, really. It's such an intense thing to talk about because I know Sarah and I have both dealt with and battled and still are going through the fire in these areas. So before we get started, I just want to preface our discussion today with this. I'm a certified mental health coach, but I am not a licensed therapist. So the things that we're going to be sharing with you today are just our own experiences and what we would share with our clients who are coming to us who, maybe are looking for some answers to some really surface level things. Just wanted to let you guys know, we're not like licensed medical professionals. Although I am a certified mental health coach, there's some deeper things sometimes we need a little bit more knowledgeable people for. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about coping mechanisms because this has been something I've been learning for sure over the last year. And I don't know, Sarah, how long have you been dealing with trying to figure out coping mechanisms in your life?
I know I've been more aware that I needed to develop coping mechanisms for the past 5 years, but I've been struggling to cope for a while.
Yeah. Well, I think we all are. I think we all,
Yeah.
especially I say over the last year, really, I definitely have been struggling to cope too. And that's a good way to put that. If we don't have the tools, we can't build the house. So we have to have some tools in our belt in order to actually get the job done. And I didn't have any tools for a really long time. About a year ago, all of us started experiencing a whole lot of crazy when COVID came and the whole world was shut down, not just here in America, but everywhere, was just on lockdown. Everybody's lives completely halted, and there was so much, people lost their jobs and their whole lives. The things that they were just so used to doing just completely quit. So, beyond just somebody who's been battling things like if you guys watched last week, emotional eating, that's definitely something I've battled with, learning to recognize that last year has been great so that I can put some things in place for that. But prior to that, I had experienced the death of a parent. I've been through a lot of severe trauma in my lifetime with abuse. And so many other things have happened that I didn't have the tools to use. And I would have really benefited from having some. Wouldn't that have been much more helpful?
Right.
Yeah. So that's what we hope to share with you guys today. Life is stressful. We all know that. And things can happen. Significant life events can happen. Like we just said about COVID, significant life events could be something that's negative. I don't know, like the death of a loved one, a divorce, miscarriage, the loss of a job, which I actually did. I lost my job last year due to COVID. And that really took a toll on me. I didn't expect it to, but it did. I mean, I was mourning the loss of my job. Have you ever lost your job, Sarah?
Yes, I'm a terrible employee. So no, it was not pandemic related.
Yeah, well, I think I've left jobs on my own intentionally, but I've always been happy to go, but I've never actually been told we can't keep you.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really tough. I didn't expect it to have affected me like it did, but it really did. And I did not know how to cope. I spiraled out of control into a severe depression and a lot of anger and stuff. So I really didn't know how to handle that very well. And I was going through my certification course at the time for mental health coach training at the same time. I was like, I think I really needed this for me right now more than to help other people, which it is for me. But now I get to help other people even more, which has always been my heart to do. But, significant life events can be positive also, like getting married. Oh my gosh. The stress and stuff that comes from that, like just planning the wedding alone. Like if you guys have ever planned a wedding, y'all know it gets stressful. And then things like, I don't know, like having a child or buying your first house or buying any house. I won't even say first house. They can be positive. Those are all positive things, but they're stressful things. So how do we find ways to cope with the stress that comes along with these big significant events in our life? So that's really what we're going to share, because you can do it one of two ways. You can do it in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way. And I definitely have been doing it in an unhealthy way. And I'll share with you guys some of my unhealthy ways in just a few minutes. I also just want to state that there's a huge difference between coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms. So if you are listening through the entire chat today and you hear us talk about a coping mechanism, these are going to be things that we are consciously choosing to do. A defense mechanism is something that you're not aware you're doing. You're actually just doing it. So usually a defense mechanism is something that you're not aware you're doing. It just happens naturally. You may be aware of it later, but not in the moment. And a coping mechanism is something you're actually choosing to do to reduce and relieve stress, anxiety, depression, and so many other mental health issues that we can come into contact with. So we talked a lot though, Sarah, last week about emotional eating. And I just want to start there because I think it's going to be helpful for us to just go into some of the deeper things, if that's okay. You shared with us that you battle emotional eating. You battle an eating disorder that you're working through getting on the other side of. So what are some things that you do when you find yourself just like out of control and your emotions are everywhere?
Yeah, definitely. For whatever coping mechanism, I have to, number one, identify exactly what I'm coping with. Sometimes it is stress, but sometimes it is loneliness. Sometimes it is big changes, and sometimes it is just like sadness, or there's a lot of different emotions, like you said, that are tied with coping mechanisms. So for me, I had to develop enough emotional intelligence and enough of a relationship with myself to know exactly that I'm in a situation in which I need to cope.
Right.
Because sometimes it's just like normal daily life and we're all just appearing normal, but in the inside I'm like coping. Like I'm figuring it out. That is the first thing that I would suggest, is if you are feeling like you're just not handling a certain situation properly, identify what it is that you're feeling. I always coach from the perspective that your body and your habits, like, you're always working for your own good. You're always working for your own survival. That's just natural. We're built that way. If we're in a fight or flight mode, like, our body is naturally designed to put our survival first. And so every habit, craving, just tendency or emotion is designed for our benefit. But if we have developed unhealthy coping mechanisms or unhealthy cravings or behaviors, it's simply because that's the best solution your body has come up with so far. So when I was at one point super just trapped, honestly, and I didn't realize that I was looking for an escape. And what my escape was Netflix and binge eating. That helped me escape from my current reality. But that was my best coping mechanism that I had developed at that point. That was what was serving me, the extent that I was looking to cope or to fix my situation. But I needed to now come up with a better solution that wasn't self-destructive. Does that make sense?
Oh, much sense. Yes. That's kind of like what we said about not having the tools that you had. You were trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole by binge eating and Netflix binging and all the negative things. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I'll just share really briefly. These last 5 months, I have had such a battle with my mental health, like feeling anxious and depressed all the time. And I no longer have the default of turning to food, which I'm very grateful that I've done the work previously and kind of like preparing for when mental health dips and ebbs and flows. I had already developed a little bit more self-awareness so that I wasn't just turning to food at every challenge. But these past 5 months, I have literally tried everything. And I'm so glad that you disclaimed at the beginning about if you need to seek further help, then do that, because that is to the level where I have been challenged with my mental health. So when I was feeling anxious and like I couldn't escape my situation and I just needed to move and get out, even in the midst of the pandemic, and it was winter in Wisconsin, so you really can't go outside and just like take a moment. So I would go to the gym. I was going to the places where I was allowed to go when I was just so overwhelmed with my own thoughts and couldn't add more stimulant to my thoughts. Like I couldn't even watch Netflix or YouTube. I just sat and crocheted. Like I posted on my Instagram, like all of the scarves that I have crocheted in the last 5 months, and it's like 20 scarves.
You have Christmas gifts now.
Right. Right. Um, so it's like just finding different things that are not self-destructive, at least, it might not be a solution, but it's a better solution than, the alternative that I had previously been turning to.
Yeah, absolutely. So crocheting is like your thing right now. That's helping you a ton.
Currently, yeah. And now that the weather is nicer, I go for a lot of walks and I talk to people. I've been connecting, even if it's just like socially distanced or virtual. I still have needed to sometimes get out of my own head. And I've done a lot of like pouring myself into my work, pouring myself into my YouTube videos, and whatever I can do to address the current emotion. And the emotion changes, which means for me, my coping mechanism has to change, because I used to turn to food as a one size fits all kind of solution to any problem that I had. If I was lonely, food was my friend. If I was anxious, food was my calm. Food was the stability. So now, with identifying all the different emotions, that isn't hunger, because hunger technically should really be the only signal that your body is giving you, that you give it food. Food is the solution to that one signal. Right. So now that I've identified that there's so many different signals that my brain is sending me, then I have been tasked with finding different coping mechanisms to actually address those different signals.
You're just saying some really great things here, honestly, because you're saying that food was your default. And if we are going to one of those unhealthy coping mechanisms as our default, whether that's binge watching something or drugs, alcohol, like binge drinking, it doesn't have to just be food, any of those things, even just isolation, isolating yourself away from people constantly. Gosh, if they become your default, then they actually are lending to the problem and not helping you cope at all. Like they may for a moment help you, but if that's the default, after a while, it's going to lead to a lot of unhealthy conditions and a lot of problems with your mental health. Then you have to deal with maybe that you didn't have before, if those are your default, and it's just kind of a pain. So that's why we're here, hoping that we can share some healthy coping mechanisms with you. And thankfully, where I live, we are pretty open. I live in Tennessee and our state is open. So I've been around people all up in their business, hugging on them and everything for a very long time. And I'm thankful for that connection, because you said that you need to connect, reach out, even if it is on social media, somehow connecting with people and bringing humanity back into existence. Hey, I'm not the only one in this world. We don't live on Mars. We're not alone. And we're all in this together. We hear that a lot, but the truth is we are, if we want to be. Like, we can totally do what I just said and isolate ourselves. So, and I've been there. I have been there. And some of the other unhealthy things I have done, I've definitely used food as an unhealthy coping mechanism for a long time. And for a while, I actually smoked cigarettes. So I was addicted to nicotine too. And that's been a long gone thing in my life, thank God. But one of the most unhealthy things that I still battle with, even beyond going to food to deal with my emotions, is staying in my own head, just kind of brooding, they call it in the mental health field. It's just going over and over things in your mind and staying like in yourself, like what I call going inward. So there's lots of different ways people say that, but basically it just means I'm having this conversation with myself all day long up here. It's not like crazy way. Okay.
Yeah, but you're in your own self dialogue. Right. Yeah.
So the inner dialogue is always going, and it's always reminding me of the things that I'm worried about or upset about, angry about, anxious about, depressed about, especially right now. But I've always been that way. I've always been an internal processor first, and then I can go outward, but I won't naturally go outward and start talking about the things unless I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm about to explode. Like I'm being like a pressure cooker and that little steam is coming out of my ears and little tiny things are causing me to want to erupt everywhere, So there's that cue for me. Like, you need to get out of your head and you need to go pray and journal and talk to your friends. Like, those are some things that are healthy, Kathryn. You need to do those. And It may take me a couple months to brood over something, but I think that there's a time and place for being able to talk about things, or journal about things. Like if you just went through an incredibly traumatic event, it's going to take you a little bit of time to actually, process that out in your head before you'll be able to talk about it. And it would be helpful because in working with people who have experienced severe trauma, if I try to get them to talk about it too soon, it actually can make it worse. If I try to get them to journal about it too soon, it can actually make it a lot worse for them. And they get just like really stuck in that moment even more. So timing is really important for some of this stuff too. And you guys can kind of decide for yourself, like take what you like and leave the rest. It's kind of like a buffet. Okay. Like fill your plate with what you like and leave everything else on the table. Okay. It's really important what you said though. I really want to go back to this because I was just thinking about this when you said doing things like crocheting and, things that you can do alone, go to the gym, take a walk, but getting out in life and talking to people and being surrounded with community and support that is so vital to coping with the things, the stressors of life, and just being able to talk about them with a trusted friend is really helpful. And even more so than you might imagine. Sometimes it's not even just talking about the event, but it's talking about the way it made me feel that actually helps me process it through. I could be telling you like, oh my gosh, so-and-so did this and it made me so mad, or I felt this, or I responded this way because that happened. Or I always want to relay my feelings like it's natural for me, but it's not natural for everybody. And it's important to do that. If you don't do that already, like, do you find yourself doing that, Sarah, when you're talking about your issues of life with someone?
Now that I do verbally process, I'm a very verbal processor. I think that's why my YouTube channel has really helped me because I have to put into words the things that I'm going through and have it make somewhat of sense for a video. That it has helped me really work through like what exactly is going on in my life, what exactly am I coping with. And I think also just identifying whether or not this is something that could be solved and there needs to be action to be taken to actually solve the problem or solve the trigger, or if this is really just something that I now cope with. Yeah, I definitely have had to get better at identifying what I'm feeling. Sometimes for me, it's reverse. I know exactly what I'm feeling. I don't know why I'm feeling that way. It's not even like, oh, there was one particular event and now I have an emotion and I have to identify what that emotion is. It's more just like, I'm feeling so disconnected, or I'm feeling so like lost or frenzied and I just don't even know why. And now I have to like go on the hunt to find what triggered that and then figure out if that was something that I can prepare for in the future so I don't have that kind of reaction again.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work.
It's a puzzle.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And I think a lot of people who are into bettering themselves kind of go into it knowing that it's not going to just be fixed in one day. And you're always going to be growing and changing and learning, and new things are always going to come. When I was writing my book, first quarter maybe was about my childhood. Thought I had dealt with all that stuff. I had been through counseling and therapy for things on my own, like nobody made me go. I just knew as a young adult that I wanted to handle those things. And I thought I was okay. I know I'd forgiven the offender. I knew I had released offense within my own heart about it. I was okay, I thought. And then I started writing this book a few years ago. That's just really showcasing my story and all of the struggle of abuse and like even why the cycle continues, breaking generational strongholds. It's really important to understand. So as I was going through that, new things were coming up and I was like, I thought I was okay. I thought I was over this. I thought I was on the other side. So now not only am I dealing with the rising issues in me, I'm angry at myself because I thought I had dealt with them already. So I got like this extra stuff on top and I struggled to cope. And if it wasn't for having accountability during that time, I would not have kept the weight off that I lost last April, May, and June. No doubt I would have probably gained it plus 15 or 20 back because I was really battling severe depression and just feeling like out of control. The trauma that is stored in my body was coming to the surface and I didn't know it was there. So it was a whole mess of stuff to deal with. So learning coping skills at that time was so important for me, even more than just like go take a hot bath. Because like you said, okay, I feel all this stuff. I want to feel better. But I think you said this earlier, something like this, like you don't really even want to do anything to fix it. Like you don't even really want to be better. You just want to sit there and be in it, but you don't want to be in it. That's kind of where I was. I was like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to deal with these emotions, but I knew that I didn't want to do anything to cope with them either. I don't know if that makes any sense. It was just too much. It was so much at one time that I shut down. And so going and taking a hot bath, breathing exercises, all the things that I'm going to share with you guys here in a second, they were not going to be working for me during this time. I had to do some deep inner work, like you just talked about, like going to why. And I had to reach out to a trauma-informed coach that I reach out to, and she kind of walked me through a few things because I had an experience as I was writing out some things about, me being a child. I saw an image of myself as a child in my head, probably about 6 years old. I was just like in this little box and I was just broken. Like my clothes were tore. Everything was dirty. I was a mess. And I was like all alone, frantic in this dark little box. And my adult self here was looking at me, like standing there next to my child self. So I know this sounds a little weird maybe, but just stay with me. I was looking down at my child self and had such compassion for myself that I never had before, because I am the hardest on myself. I have hardly any self-compassion. I bottle everything up and put it to the side. I disassociate with my feelings as much as possible. I used to, at least. And I didn't want to look at it, just like keep going, living life. Because as a child, even though I was dealing with severe abuse at home and home life was really hard and terrible, I had still had to go to school. I still had to brush my teeth every day and do my homework. Like I still had to live life. So I just learned unintentionally how to keep going in life through all the hard things. But in that moment, I saw myself. I had such compassion. I want to just reach in and rescue that little girl who had been completely neglected, completely forgotten, and left in a dark, scary place. And so I couldn't sleep that night. And I just got up and I literally went into my closet right over here because my husband was sleeping and I didn't want to wake him up. And I just closed the door and turned the light on, and I just cried and I journaled and I just thought about it. At first I was angry at myself for not saving me. Like, why didn't you do something? And then I realized I'm doing something now by recognizing that little girl. And now I'm going to tell her she's safe. And now I'm going to tell her, hey, we're okay now. Like I'm an adult. We're okay. It just took me having to really go inward. So sometimes it's a lot more than we expect it to be when we start down this journey of healing. So if you've come to this video, I really feel this is necessary to say, and you're just looking for a quick fix, this is not it. Like, this is not our heart. Our heart is for healing sustainably. That means over the long haul. That means, yeah, new things are going to come, new wounds. Like I thought that I had healed all this stuff, but something new came that I hadn't quite gotten healed the first time, and the Band-Aid just got ripped off. And now I'm left with this big festering wound to deal with. So new things happen. And then we continue living. So tomorrow something else may happen that completely wounds me too. And I have to deal with that, right? Like that's life. My heart is to help you to definitely get the quick fix right now. Like this is what coping mechanisms are for. They're short term. Like they're to help you through while you're trying to figure out the why. Would you agree with that, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely. When we're talking about coping, it is getting you through until you can find a solution. You're just coping. Sometimes survival is really all you can expect from yourself. And that's okay. Like, I really love what you said about just like having compassion on yourself. And then it's highly emotional. Like I'm trying to keep it together right now. It's highly emotional to see yourself through like almost an outsider's eyes and see that you are just as worthy of compassion, of grace, patience as everybody else. And I think a lot of people that cope with a lot of internal stuff are also the type of people who are really empathetic toward other people because they know that life can be really tough and situations can be so harsh that they have so much grace and compassion and empathy for other people. But often it's hard for us to like turn that in on ourselves and be like, yeah, you're okay. And I see you. You're worth that same empathy that you give others. So when you're talking about, quick fixes, no, that's not what this is. Because if you knew the problem and you knew that there was a quick solution, then you wouldn't need a big, video on coping mechanisms. But for what we're talking about, it is just kind of like getting through the day to day, not making the problem worse, not getting into a vicious cycle and creating more problems, and really just finding different ways that address what you're feeling and just get you through to the next day, to the next stage. And again, continuing to nurture that relationship with yourself. If you're a highly empathetic and compassionate person, then you probably know that relationships require a lot of flexibility. And that might even be something that you're coping with as well, is that you are incredibly flexible and adaptable when it comes to other people, and you're the person who ends up getting neglected. When you're in a relationship with yourself, then have that flexibility and adaptability to your own needs and your own, body's signals, your emotional signals, everything. And just realize that you don't have to just fix you and that's it, because then you'll be done focusing on you. You're in a relationship with you, honey. So get comfortable with it, settle in, and really get to know yourself, and then have the same joy that you might have in getting to know another person. Have that joy in getting to know yourself and getting to learn to listen to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. That's really good. You may not even like yourself. I don't know. I've been there where I did not like myself. So I think that's really great advice, Sarah. Thank you for that reminder that we have to love ourselves. I've come a long way though, you guys. I have so much to share, but we only have so much time. So I'm like, I can't share everything. But, the longer you guys hang out on my channel, the more stories you will hear. I promise you that. And then also you're going to get my book in September, right? You can read them all, a lot of them on there. Not all, because goodness, you'd never quit reading. But let's go ahead and move into some ways that we can cope when things get tough and stressful, even if they're positive things in our life, like getting married. Instead of going to the unhealthy things that we discussed already, and you talked a little bit about some healthy things, I want to share what I believe for me is the healthiest ways to cope. And sometimes I have to use more than one of these things at a time when I'm going through something incredibly stressful. And sometimes just one will work. So one of the things we already talked about, which was just getting support, like getting help from somebody that you love, and you trust, or reaching out to somebody like a mental health professional or a mental health coach like myself. And sometimes you may need to go even further and, to a therapist or, psychiatrist or something like that. Also, relaxation. I recently was able to go to a spa. You guys, if you follow me on Instagram, you totally seen that. I was able to go for a half a day. It was so nice. I got a massage, like a facial. So it was so much fun. And I felt like the weight that I was carrying around completely released after that 6 hours in the spa, so you may not be able to do 6 hours in a spa, but find some way to relax, whatever that looks like for you. Exercising is something that helps me tremendously, and it doesn't necessarily have to be strenuous exercising. For me, it is sometimes just going to take a power walk while I'm mad, to walk it out. Some people like to run. Not this girl. I did not like to run. I'm like, things be moving, shouldn't be moving, and my back hurts. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I be walking, but I'll speed walk, no problem. So I get out there and like mad walk it through the neighborhood. And sometimes I want to reach out to a friend while I'm mad walking, and I can't get anybody to answer the phone. And that's when I know God just wants me to talk to him about it. So I'll just do that, forget it. And that's another thing, get outside. Like I get outside and get into nature. I love to be outside. I love to look at the green grass and the green trees and the birds and the clouds and the sunshine, and sometimes even the rain. So just getting outside in nature, especially if you're like in a cooped up apartment or something like that, going out to a park somewhere. Here's a really big one that I want to share with you guys. And hopefully somebody will use this. And this will be the one thing that you're like, that's exactly what's been messing with me. I had to learn good time management. Okay. I know this sounds like a weird coping mechanism, but getting your schedule under control is so life-giving and helps you just be way more calm about things and like be able to handle things that come your way a lot easier. Learning to say no is a good thing. And that was hard for me for a long time, because like Sarah was just talking about, you're everything for everyone else. I had to learn boundaries. So the word no was really important, and saying like, no, I'm not okay with that. No, I don't agree with you about that. And no, I can't put that on my schedule. No, it's a good word to say. Although I do tend to get a little fighty and use no a lot. So I'm like, wait a minute, I should have said yes. I said yes. That's what I meant to say. And then another really big one for me is journaling. So I'm going to just stop here for just a second and just stay here. Okay. For just a minute. Some of you might already been like, I'm like ready to turn off this video. Listen, this is serious. Okay. I'm telling you this because it's so important. I have journals. I have like 4 journals. I have like one right here. I have like 4 more over by my window still that you guys can't see. I journal a lot. And I do it because I know the power of journaling. And not just because I say so, but because medical, like science field has said, hey, journaling is helpful for reducing blood pressure, anxiety, actually healing your body. Journaling can help you heal your physical body. Like, whoa. Okay, that's awesome. 100% helps you get out of your own head. And that's my problem. I talked about that already. Like staying in my thoughts. If I can just get them out on paper, it helps me tremendously. A lot of inner healing and pain and stuff in my life has been healed because of journaling. So those are just some ways that I cope. Do you use any of those? I don't crochet, so I couldn't say like me too.
Yeah.
No.
I totally echo what you said about journaling. It has been my go-to thing for the capital T traumas of my life. And it doesn't come right away. It's not like something happens and then all of a sudden I'm just full of words to express how I'm feeling. I have to give myself a week or so. Like when I had a miscarriage in summer of 2019. I had no words to describe how I was feeling. So I did a lot of painting during that time. I guess sometimes what I turn to is like to create something.
Yeah.
So like crocheting, painting. If I have to express myself in some way other than words, it's going to be, through art or something. But then when I'm finally ready to like put it on paper and then be able to move on from that, because sometimes I find myself ruminating on different things and keeping thoughts in my head because I don't want to forget them. I don't want to not learn what I needed to learn from that.
Right.
And like just move on and then have it happen again because I haven't learned from history. So it repeats itself.
Exactly.
So I have to dump my thoughts onto the page. Now it's on paper. I'm allowing myself to move on from it. Cause if I ever needed to reference it, I could come back and read that and be able to pick that up again at a more healthy emotional time. I have to be able to set that trauma aside or set that grief aside and handle other things without having that constantly overwhelm my mind. So yeah, I totally echo what you say about journaling, whether it be a daily thing or just when you need to lay something to rest and have it on paper so you can have it recorded. Beyond that, I cope with learning. So I like to binge watch YouTube videos about random things that don't have anything to do with me.
Me too. I do that too.
I'm a big like language learner, and sometimes I listen to podcasts in Spanish because I'm like semi-fluent in Spanish. It just depends on what you're trying to cope with. Again, it requires something different. So when I'm feeling frenzied, I tend to either try to learn something new or create something or then process. I have a therapist. And
right. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that's great. And I think that's basically your parasympathetic nervous system's way of getting out all the excess energy from the emotion or the trauma that occurred. And that's completely healthy and normal. And actually, like I would recommend to my clients to do when they're like, I'm just stuck right here and I don't know what to do. I want to scream. Then I'm like, then do that, or whatever. Like allow yourself to do those things that you just try to pent up. And then all the nervous energy comes out in a negative way or whatever, or just in your body, you have pain in your body from it because you're not crocheting or painting or whatever, creating a place where you're aware of your emotions is really great. 4 years ago, my mom died of pancreatic cancer and I miss her like every day. On Mother's Day, which is always hard, I just wrote her a letter in my journal. It was like 5 pages long. And I wrote like as if I was calling her on the phone, like, Mom, you will not believe this. I am so sick and tired of this. I don't know what to do. What would you do? I know what you would say. You'd say this, it was just crazy, like writing, but it was so therapeutic. I sat up in my loft for like 4 hours and just wrote. By the time I was done, I just felt a release of sorrow come out that day. That'll probably come out again in the future. But we have talked about some really great stuff here today, some really deep stuff, some things I didn't necessarily know was going to come out. So hopefully you guys are encouraged and feel like, hey, we all have some stuff and you're here right here with us. We're putting this stuff out there for you guys to hopefully be encouraged. That's the whole point of this entire series. Next week, we're going to be talking about progress over perfection when it comes to any kind of goal. But truly, I'm going to be talking about my physical health and my mental health because I am a recovering perfectionist. I don't know, Sarah, are you a recovering perfectionist? Okay, yeah. So you're going to hear some fun stuff next week. So definitely be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already done so, just go ahead and click that little button. It's totally free. I'll keep saying that forever. So you guys know, I didn't realize that some YouTube channels charge you. I didn't know that. So I just always want to make sure you guys know this content is 100% free. And there's always ways that you can support me in making this content in the description below. You guys can go check those things out. Click the notification bell so you'll know when we upload our series here. If you guys want to go backtrack and watch any of the other episodes, I've just marked them all episode 1, 2, 3, 4. So pretty easy in the description. And you guys can go find this in the video section and then go to Sarah's channel and watch video number 1, like the actual video number 1. I'm numbering them 1 starting on my channel so I don't confuse people and they're looking for 1 on my channel. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's all we really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching till the end. We really love you and appreciate you and just hope that you are going to find in some or any or all of these coping mechanisms helpful to help you get through life because that's all we're really trying to do, right?
Yeah, right.
All right. So you guys be back here next week at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.